What if the Avengers all had mental illness? That is how Brian Michael Bendis put together the team of the legendary Dark Avengers, a team so great at what they do that part of their story inspired I was going to say summer blockbuster, but I guess it's really not a summer movie because the summer hasn't even started. Thunderbolts, aka New Avengers, was inspired by this run. And I think that's pretty evident when you dive into it. But what I was thinking about as I was reading this and loving it, spoiler alert, was isn't this like this has got to be the best of Bendis, the peak of his Avengers run? And we're going to talk more about that as we go on. But what I'm most curious about as we dive in up front is A, whether you guys have read this before, and B, what like what your thoughts about it when you first read it are like compared to now. That's what I'm really curious about. And to answer that question, and a lot of others, we've got a full house on deck. We've got Cale,
What's up, dark dogs?
Marco,
Howdy ho.
Tyler,
Good evening, pals. I'm excited to talk about this.
and I'm Sean. And I don't know if I've ever agreed more with what Tyler has said on the show because this is the era for me. This is the peak. This is the pinnacle of the Bendis era, so to speak. One of the taglines for Siege was 7 years in the making or something like that. And it's totally true, right? Because if you think about where things kicked off with Avengers Disassembled, and then you look at where they end up with Dark Avengers, like I'm certain that Bendis didn't know that this is where it would end up, but man, if it doesn't feel like he did, because it all connects, it all works together.
I guess I'll go first to talk about my feelings on whether I read this before. I mean, Sean already spoiled it. Of course, I read this. This was during the heyday of my comic book reading. I was in high school when this came out, and I was reading it currently. I went into my long boxes. I was almost going to read this issue by issue. I didn't. I read it digitally because I think I have missing issues, and I did not want to open that Pandora's box and then feel like I had to go fix it. So I avoided that. But like this is stuff I was picking up by issue. And man, at the time, I loved this stuff. The whole trajectory. I mean, I think my first comic that I remember picking up was Wolverine Origins 2 or 1, I forget. And then an early issue of Thunderbolts, the Warren Ellis Deodato stuff. So this was like clearly in my trajectory of books I was reading, just in terms of storyline with the whole Norman Osborn of it all and half the cast really. So I loved this book. I never read it since. So this is my first reread. I only read it when it was coming out monthly. And I got to say, there's a reason why I don't reread stuff. Did not hit me the same way. In a lot of ways, it didn't hit me the same way.
Let's leave it there.
But yeah, but that's all I'm going to say for that.
We'll go. I'm sure we'll go into that, but I think I feel pretty similarly to Tyler. Actually, I also read this when it was coming out, and I think I started with the Warren Ellis Thunderbolts before this. I guess this would have been, yeah, post Secret Invasion, right? So yeah, Secret Invasion. I was in the hype. And coming out of it, like I was devouring absolutely anything that I could get, the fallout of it all, and I was just excited to be part of the Marvel ecosphere at the time because at this point I think the New 52 had already caused me to sort of drop off. So Secret Invasion happened and I was like, sweet, let's go. I guess I'm a Marvel head.
New 52 wouldn't have happened yet.
No.
You sure?
100% sure, yeah. This is 2009. New
Okay.
52
It's like ends
started
in this ends in
2011.
2010, 2011, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think not that different. But yeah, I at the time, I remember loving the Diodato art. Norman Osborn as a guy in charge was absolutely nuts. And that the Tommy Lee Jones
Okay.
look was just like even back then, like you can hear it in your head, like he's giving these monologues as Tommy Lee Jones, and it's just uh yeah, I look back fondly on this.
For me, longtime comics reader, first time Bendis fan. Gotta say, this was first time reading it, and I I was impressed. We'll get into like the reasons why. But I do feel like this hmm, comes from like a previous time, a previous iteration of my comics reading experience. And it's on the heels of the New 52 where I started reading weekly comics, but I've never been as integrated into Marvel as I have DC. And so this felt like more almost like in the same way I felt like Alias was. This feels like more of my uh, style and more of the things that I'll jive with in this universe. So I really appreciated it reading it from that perspective and getting to kind of maybe find my way in it a little bit more, which I appreciate.
Cool. As for me, I mean, I obviously I've read this before. I think though that I've only read. I used to read comics like, let's say issue 6 of Dark Avengers was coming out. I'd read like 4 and 5 to get ready for 6 because I was just so sucked in.
So you would reread the previous months or
Absolutely.
Yeah,
two.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yep.
Wild.
And whenever the siege portion started, I was rereading those century focused issues that we'll get to multiple times because I was obsessed with the century. And whatever the revelations were going to be. And I wanted to make sure I completely understood what Bendis was trying to put down. But ever since then, I haven't revisited it. I've read Siege a couple times, but I haven't revisited Dark Avengers. So this was a very interesting look back for me. And I'm definitely glad we did it, but we'll get into the nitty gritty of it here in just a bit. Thank you for being here with us, whether you are live or in the future. Really appreciate you showing up for this book club. We are going to break down the entirety of the Bendis Deodato era of Dark Avengers, issues 1 through 16. Nothing that comes after, so none of that other post Fear or Fear Itself, post Fear Itself, Dark Avengers stuff. So strap in for all of that. Want to say thank you to Hayden's Hideout, who has been a channel member for 3 months now. Thank you so much, Hayden. Says, hey, glad to wind down after work with the pals and Fallout 4. Awesome. Little
Hayden also
gaming with the
says
pals.
Hayden also says this was brand new to me. I was 8 when this series started.
God damn it.
So this was before my comic collecting journey. And I thought I woke up and my back hurt a lot today.
8. Wow. Huh. I
Post
just
2000.
I just recognize my mortality. Appreciate it.
Near also channel member for 1 month says, sup pals. Didn't get to finish the run since airport troubles and finals week listening in from Appleton, Wisconsin. But great first impressions. And first impressions are what matter, right? That's what
Hope you
they
did
say.
good on those finals.
Yeah. Hope you killed it, dude. So this run ran from March 2009 to June 2010. The writing is by Brian Bendis, art by Mike Deodato, colors by Rain Barreto. This is not the first Bendis Deodato collaboration. They worked together very briefly during New Avengers. Bendis has talked about how he actually didn't feel like he got the best of Mike Deodato during his New Avengers. And so this was a chance to. It's weird because just before this was the Thunderbolts by Ellis and Deodato. And Bendis has talked about how he felt like he learned how Deodato works best by reading that run. He's on record as saying Warren Ellis is his favorite writer. I'm not sure if he would say that today, but that's what he used to say. And that Thunderbolts run was the direct inspiration for this run, which if you were reading both at the time, or rather if you were reading Thunderbolts and then this, you can absolutely feel the inspiration.
You're saying so Bendis' favorite writer was Ellis.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, he's right about that Diodato stuff on Thunderbolts. That is peak
Yeah.
Diodato stuff for me.
Yep.
I've realized that this is some of the first Diodato like superhero stuff I might have read outside of maybe like what maybe like a couple issues here and there of I'm forgetting the series, but I've only ever known Diodato from outside of the big two. So seeing him here like indie stuff, I was like, oh shit,
Wild.
this
No,
looks
he
great.
he did the first what was it, 12 issues or something of Spurrier's Flash.
Oh right, yes.
But I guess this
And
still
I-
would be
I-
the earliest in terms of when this was released.
Well,
I
for
guess.
for Marco certainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see echoes of that even back here. Like,
Shadows and stuff, man.
yeah.
So Norman Osborn is a guy who's really lucky. He's a nutcase who gets a little bit of power, and then parlays that power into essentially being at the right place at the right time. At the end of Secret Invasion, he gets the kill shot on the Skrull Queen. Everyone sees it on national television, and it makes Norman Osborn an overnight celebrity. And of course, that comes with questions about his Green Goblin heritage and all that. But the government puts him in a position to run Hammer, which replaces Shield and sends everybody, like Iron Man, who had been the previous director of S.H.I.E.L.D., out of the government and puts Norman and his cronies in. And one of the last, if not the last, images from Secret Invasion is Norman coming to the table with the Cabal, which consists of Doom and Loki and Namor. We see them throughout this run. Emma Frost, and that's how this whole thing kicks off. And so it's Norman in charge, and that's how we get the Dark Reign. This is a 16-issue series that is it's not this is an interesting time because I wouldn't say that this is as arc focused as a lot of other series that we read. There are a lot of issues in here that are not quite one shots because thematically, things are linked and stuff like that. But it doesn't follow a clear narrative arc based sequence.
There's probably only really 2 arcs in this entire run. The rest of it feels like ancillary pieces to other stuff happening in the Marvel Universe at the time. I mean, hell, 2 of the issues aren't even written by Bendis.
Right.
Yeah, and I liked that structure. It felt a lot more freeform because even the first arc, or like whatever we'll call an arc before, some of the first, hold on, what was it? The like Utopia pieces, that felt complete. And then you get those like 2 issues, then you work your way into the siege pieces. But even that, I think all flowed continuously. So I liked those stylings. Like it made for things that happen in the first 2 issues to take effect down in like issue 14, and it wasn't as much laying seeds because sometimes you can foreshadow things, but I like that there were a lot of flashbacks that would bring you back to a moment that would then continue and be finished off later. So it was a cool technique. I enjoyed that.
So the series kicks off with a Morgan Le Fay story, which I don't think I had seen her prior to this, but boy, did she shoot up my list of characters that I needed to see a lot more of, especially drawn by Mike Deodato.
You love a deep neckline.
Yes, I do. And yes. And on the second page, we get introduced to our team of Avengers. And I don't know about you guys, but I was totally thinking about Thunderbolts when I was looking at this page. It completely reminds me of the movie and how it ends with whatever her name is introducing the new team of Avengers. But this one consists of Iron Patriot as the leader, Norman Osborn, Marvel Boy, noh-varr, the Sentry, Miss Marvel. This is before she was Captain Marvel, so we're gonna say Miss Marvel. But it's not even Carol Danvers. I think her name is Carla Sofa or something like that.
Yep.
The Moonstone.
You're right.
Ares, Daken as Wolverine, Bullseye as Hawkeye, and Matt Gargan as Spider-Man, but he's really Venom. And so it's a sort of a Thunderbolts-y kind of thing. Maybe more the way we think about Thunderbolts now versus then, but they're the Dark Avengers.
I mean, it's literally half the team of Thunderbolts that was on Warren Ellis's run.
Right.
Like I have issue 2's cover up here. The top half of the team, actually, most of the team is from Thunderbolts, and they reference it constantly. That's the trajectory Norman had. So like, yeah, I think it's fully in turn with that. Yeah, and even then, Ares was a mighty Avenger previous to this, right?
Yep.
And noh-varr was the weird choice, and it remains a weird choice throughout the book. Because I think that's a Morrison creation that was in a Morrison book, and then kind of just
you're right.
fucked off until this, or until some Secret Invasion tie-ins and stuff.
After this, he's in Young Avengers.
The Gillen and McKelvey run.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great in it.
Yeah.
So, very interesting group of characters on its face. I remember sort of being ambivalent about this when it was first announced. Um, I liked the Thunderbolts. I didn't understand how Dark Avengers was going to work. As you guys know, I've always been I don't really like team or villain focused books. So when this was announced, even back then, I had that same perspective, and I was like, I don't know about this. But the first issue really knocks you off your feet. At least it knocked me off my feet. The art is fantastic, and we're gonna talk a lot about Mike Diodato, but I feel like this first issue in particular, maybe he had a lot of lead time, but I feel like he did some of the best work he does throughout the whole series in this first issue. His facial work is insanely good. That Tommy Lee Jones, Norman Osborn is so definitive and striking. It's perfect. Like some people don't like it when comic book characters have real life counterparts. For whatever reason, I think this works.
I think there was a strength in that first issue of uh the setup, the premise, like coming into this cold, the fact that the again that second page reveal is just like, I am Norman Osborn, and we're gonna be the Avengers. Like, okay, hold on, like table setting here. What is going on? And as you go through, it gives you your montage of collecting all of your team members and stuff. But I think the interesting part is this: like he's leaning on the familiarity of um, Osborn as being villainous and nefarious, and so as he's collecting his team, supposedly for altruistic means, with picking villains, it's like, okay, surely he's getting at something here. And as it reveals at the end, right, that it is Norman, that was the hook, the all of that culminating, where it's like, okay, he's putting together the team. Sure, he's given this power, but now he's leading it. What the fuck's going on here? I like that a lot.
Yeah, you always question his motives and who's in charge. Him or the goblin. And the book plays on that a lot, but you know, if you know anything about Norman Osborn, you know this is a mess.
I mean, the whole book is just waiting for the other shoe to fall.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like just the meta gaming, the fact that it's comic books and everything, rubber bands back to a status quo, but just the fact that this is Norman Osborn's life trajectory. He is in control until he's not. And with him being the main character of this book, it was really seeing how far he can get until that house of cards comes crumbling down.
Yeah, I agree with Marco. The seeing Norman sort of put the team together is fun. And man, Bendis's dialogue just works so well throughout, establishing who these people are in relatively few um panels and word balloons, we always talk about Bendis speak and
Yeah.
how obnoxious and annoying it can be at times. But I gotta say, throughout this whole run, one of the thoughts I kept coming back to was how unbelievably readable this was. It's it's like fun to read his dialogue. It doesn't feel like a chore. It feels interesting. And maybe that's because he's getting the focus is on villains, so they get to say some wild shit. But I had a lot of fun reading this.
I mean, I find Bendis to always be readable. I know people think contrary to that. People get, I mean, I have a page up that if you just look at the page, it looks like Bendis speak. Like, you don't even have to read any of the words, and just looking at the panel layout and the word bubble layout, like, oh, that's Bendis who wrote that. It's a very TV influenced form of dialogue. It's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I enjoy it. This is what I grew up on, essentially, this kind of stuff. So I don't dislike it. I think in some places it can be detrimental to the art. It's always when Victoria Hand and Osborne have any kind of interaction, you're going to get a page or two like that. But other than that, it's not as quippy and back and forthy that you might suspect from a Bendis book throughout. He kind of lets things breathe a little bit throughout this book.
Yeah, there are definitely, I think there are places where it does crop up, especially later on. When especially at the end when the villains are just like sitting around the breakfast table or whatever. There were a couple of conversations where I clocked it. But yeah, overall, like I think like we've said a couple of times here, this is Bendis at his height. So like he was just firing on all cylinders.
I think it gets noticeable in the like there could be a word or two in a bubble cut or a bubble maybe like a small one cut. There's an instance where I just happen to turn to it where you see Ghost, which also I think first time I've ever seen comics version of Ghost, so that was kind of wild.
Love the character.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, as like they call me Ghost, and Norman's just like I know, and Ghost goes into whatever they're saying. Oh, it's too tempting. Norman, I know. Keep saying something. I know. I'm like, okay, we get that you know the thing. Like all of this could have kind of they're like small little um, moments where you can probably win back some time, some pacing there, but it doesn't become disruptive. And maybe that's like a nitpick on my part, but there are definitely pieces here, and I did start to feel it more throughout, like towards the back end of the run, where everybody would try to have maybe a word or two in, where you could have let the moment sit for the moment.
Can I just make one more shout out about that same scene you mentioned, Marco, with Ghost?
Yeah.
Because I think that is emblematic of what I enjoy about this era of Marvel. Because that Ghost then joins the Thunderbolts, which I think was Diggle at the time, which then ties into Siege. And like that's also bridging Thunderbolts from the previous run of Thunderbolts through this into the new run of Thunderbolts, into Siege. Like everything is kind of weaved in together throughout, which we just don't really see in comics anymore. Like you just read that. You read the Ghost bit. You got what you needed out of it. But you probably didn't know that he would have been in Thunderbolts at the same time. So you gain more if you read other things, but you don't lose any if you're not reading it. And I think that's such a good perspective that this book has. And I think this book is kind of the glue for a lot of books at the time. Like the whole Dark Reign thing. Like we didn't get to read the list, which the list is a whole bunch of one-shots that are great during this era. They mentioned it a couple times. Victoria Hand is going through it throughout this.
And I do want to add that there are moments, and I'm going to pull up an example where those extra bits add to a character, add a bit of flavor. Like in that same scene, in the next scene, literally on the next page, there's a silent panel where Ares is just looking at Miss Marvel, like eyeing her, ogling, and then it just says, "You're a fine woman." She responds with, "Oh my God," and he responds with, "Yes, I am." Right, and like, okay, in those moments, you kind of win me back. So I think overall, it's like it evens out.
So Bendis again, he chose Morgan Le Fay as the first villain that they encounter, the first problem to solve. And the Dark Avengers are having a lot of, they're having PR problems. They're having all kinds of problems straight out the gate. But the biggest problem is Morgan Le Fay, who is after Doctor Doom making a play for him. Clearly, there's some kind of messy history between these two characters that Norman's not even all the way clued in on. But he sees this as an opportunity to kind of test out his team, but also to make it so that Doctor Doom might even owe him a favor. Um, did you guys think that this was that Morgan and her issue with Doom was a compelling way to kick off this story?
I felt there was ancillary to what we needed to know. Like it's just set dressing. Um, the keys are that this is a overpowered character that our team of underpowered quote unquote heroes need to come up against, and it's a great first mission because it shows how out of depth they are and how they don't work well as a team. And I think for that it does a good job. Um, I think like you said, like I think that Morgan Le Fay has something to do with Doom and magic and his mom. I think that's the key there. But like Norman's our POV. He doesn't know any of that shit, so we don't need to know it. So I thought it was fine. I think it allowed to some really good moments with Sentry. You know, right off the bat, Sentry is our Superman, and he gets got immediately, or we're led to believe. And I thought that was a great visual. I forgot that happens. I forgot how often Sentry gets fucking mollywopped in this book. But I thought that was an interesting bit too, and it also showed how brutal they were able to get. I mean, Marco gave me a panel here to take from this Morgan Le Fay fight, where Sentry just decapitates her. I did not put it in the slides out of risk of YouTube. But like that's happening in a mainline book. Like that's Red Band. They charge you an extra $1 for that now.
And that was a page turn too,
Yeah.
right? And so jaw dropped when I saw. I'm like, yo, what? That happened in this book? Holy shit! And it for me, Sean asked if this kind of like worked. I think initially it started off slow. It started off slow for me. Like, okay, I don't really care about this. Like, what are we walking into here? Until that moment of head ripped off. Oh, this was so you can start to get a sense of where these people stand, maybe power wise, and not only like physical power wise, but in relation to Norman and maybe even each other, because then you start to get other tension between like Ares and Bullseye. And so I thought up until then it was slow. And what was that? I was like maybe issue 2, 3. Um, and I at that point was like, oh, invested in what's going on. You're on
For
mute.
me,
Oh,
the Morgan Le Fay stuff, I didn't care about it when I first read through this, outside of the fact that I thought she was really hot. Um, this time around, it's very clear that it's just a situation where you can use a villain that you don't really have to do too much explaining to show the relationships between these other characters and introduce them in compelling ways and just do cool visual shit. Like we get to see Morgan Le Fay chased by a T-Rex. Do we need to? No, we didn't need to, but that shit's crazy and it's fun to look at. And I think Bendis did a great job of making this book, especially in the early goings, equal parts um explorative of these characters and interesting on that level, but also just brutal and fun to read. Making it no surprise that this was actually the #1 selling comic book for Marvel during its publication history, which I don't know this next part for a fact, but it very likely makes it then the best-selling comic in comics during its run because it's the best-selling Marvel comic. So it's probably the best-selling comic.
Was there a New Avengers at the time?
There was a New Avengers at the time, yes.
Yeah, there was a Mighty Avengers too. I think Dan Slott was doing it at the time. Because I remember the ties into Siege. Okay, wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Avengers would have been while they were all hiding out.
Mm-hmm.
this these first couple of scenes also in during this like Le Fay part, the first time where I noticed that Diodato uses a lot of 2-page spreads. They appear constantly here, and I thought that was really interesting because it made that single panel splash a lot more effective. You're kind of used to a continuing story across, and I was curious about like what and how um well, I guess like where he's drawing that from, and it felt a lot more cinematic. You guys have talked about, and I think after reading books like Civil War, I feel like a lot of comics and kind of felt like that, where it was about the fluidity of action between pages, and I think he was consistent about that. But I thought it was a really smart way to be able to capture cool scenes in a large format, similar like to like widescreen, and accentuate smaller moments or significant moments. Because I'm also thinking about the where what's her name, Lindy, gets choked out. That was preceded by like two page, single page, and then her whatever happens is a single page, and again like accentuating.
It feels cinematic to me.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, especially this opening arc with Morgan Le Fay. It is just, this is the third arc MCU CG battle. You know, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense either. I mean, that's just what this book is. Like this is the blockbuster of comics, even at the time, which is probably why I enjoyed it. You know, I was eating this up. There was this bit in that opening arc with Venom, Matt Gargan, who's just out of his depth throughout, and he's just complaining the whole time. And I'm like, okay, there's the Bendis of it that I can see even with the Deodato art and everything.
There's a moment in issue 4 where the Sentry resurrects, and up until this point, going all the way back to the Secret Invasion days, and even before that, you don't really know what's going on with the Sentry, but he's not creepy quite yet. It's still like, you love him. He's the golden whatever his superhero tagline is, the golden Avenger of Good or whatever it is. And he fights the Hulk to a standstill, and it's like, wow, we love the Sentry, right? But then here you kind of start to go, wait a second, this guy's creepy. There's something really wrong with him. And so after Morgan Le Fay, kills him off in issue 4, he makes this grand return, just appears in the middle of the sky over Avengers Tower where the Dark Avengers operate out of. And the light is just booming. And, these guys are freaked out. And it's actually the ending of the issue where Norman Osborn is looking at him like he's got the fear of God in his eyes right there. Um, and one of the coolest things that I could only have noticed, it's not possible to notice this without reading this shit multiple times. If you look at that thing that is over Avengers Tower, in my mind, that highly is reminiscent of the Void's final form. It's almost like a tentacle monster, which is what the Void ends up being. And if you look at that, it looks very, very similar. So I thought that was a cool picture. And Sentry's right over it. He's hovering right over it. So yeah, I thought that was a cool little tease, I guess.
Extending that further, right? Like if the tentacles are reaching out towards the sun, right? That ball of light that he is, right? That's like the conflicting part of him. And that first moment where Norman realizes, oh shit, this is what this guy is. You can see the beads of sweat, and that's the first indication of, oh, he's out of his depth here. And that was compelling. That I really, really liked.
And this is all written by Bendis too. Like, well, not the original Sentry book, but like Sentry in the Avengers, and this is like a culmination of the Sentry arc.
Yeah.
An arc for a character consistently playing out over the course of years and years and years with a legitimate payoff. You don't see that a ton these days. And so it's really cool to read this part of the Sentry story where I think he's probably at his most compelling. But Marco pointed out something that is essential to this story, which is Norman Osborn being out of his depth. He's very much a type A guy. He's a business owner. We think of Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin, and he is that, but he's also a highly capable businessman who's very successful. If he didn't have the Green Goblin, he probably would be like I don't know, like an Elon Musk or something. Like he's very successful.
At best.
To be fair, Hammer is Doge, like
Well,
unelected official doing his own cuts to the government. Yeah,
100%. It's very similar. And so, but he's a guy. Even with all of that being said, he's a guy. He's hanging around Doctor Doom, Lady Loki, Emma Frost, Namor. These are killers. These are killers. These are people who could snap his neck with no problem at all. And the Sentry is someone that Norman is trying to control, a being that could end all life in on Earth with no effort. Norman Osborn is the gatekeeper of that.
and Norman's only real power is his cunning. Like even the suit is something he just gets from Iron Man after Ghost, breaks into the vault.
If I recall, there were a couple of issues somewhere in Dark Reign where Norman had to like fight for control of the suits. Do you guys recall that?
I don't
feel
remember
like
it,
I remember
but-
like him having trouble and having to like wrestle control over it.
Could have been maybe like a Dark Reign Spider-Man issue or something like that.
It could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be.
Yeah, but I like that Norman's out of his depth, even with
Yeah.
Sentry. Like, the thing that jumped out to me here that I really enjoyed was the relationship between Norman and Sentry, because Norman is trying to use all the tools that he has for Sentry, but it just doesn't work the same way. Like these are both men who fight with their own internal demons, and I guess it never, when I originally read it, that clear 1-to-1 didn't jump out to me as much as it did for the read through, where Norman's just like, oh, you just gaslight yourself. The void doesn't exist, which is clearly what he does to the Green Goblin constantly.
Yeah.
But it's always there. It doesn't matter how often he can say it's not there. It is there, and it's not. He doesn't accept it, and he tries to do that same thing with Bob and the Void and Sentry, and it just doesn't work. It's just clear this guy has no real control over his mind, and he can't teach anyone to have control over it.
Well, and the difference is that the void is real.
Yeah, and so is the Green Goblin. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter
Well, yeah.
how often you try to lie to yourself. It's there.
But yeah, but the goblin is like the other half of the coin for Norman, right? Like that's in there. That's mental illness. That's just like in there. But the void is a whole different thing inside of Bob.
It's an actual entity that lives.
Yeah.
and I thought that like it was weird because it made me fearful of Bob, but almost pity the like Sentry part of him in that moment before it's confirmed that it's for sure like the void is his own thing. And I liked that play because then it also made Norman almost feel genuine. He's like, look, I beat this too. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, like, you know, if Norman can do it, so can you. Like, let's go. Like, he's rallying the team.
Which, not to interrupt, is great storytelling if you're falling for it too.
Sure, yeah. And then when it starts to get revealed that, you know, Norman's not all that together, and that was another jaw drop moment. I'm like, oh shit, this is happening too. Like, all of this is, to what Tyler said earlier, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, how much more can each of these characters get pushed before they break? And everyone has that breaking point, and they're deranged.
Got to throw that in there. But, you know, this isn't the beginning of the relationship between Sentry and Norman. If I remember correctly, it starts a couple years before this in World War Hulk. I think that's where Norman and the Sentry first hook up. And so this is something that's been building for years. And at first, you totally read it as you should. Norman just trying to manipulate and have a massively powered person in his back pocket. But in my mind, throughout this run, I think he actually comes to genuinely care about Bob. I think he sees a lot of himself in Bob and his own problems, and he wants to help Bob. I think he believes he's got the Green Goblin beat. And he knows how to tell Bob how to do that too. But then when he realizes that that's just not the case, and Bob is not in control, and the void is real and is present, then he's like, all right, well, I got to play this game how it's got to be played. I got to play the void too if I can. He's always willing to play the game, but I do believe that there was a genuine part of Norman that kind of cared about him.
I don't know.
I don't think so. That's how
yeah.
I read it, which is, I think it's fine to read it either way. But like, I read it as like, no, Norman is just manipulating everyone here, even the reader at some
Trying.
points, or trying to. Yeah, yeah. There's only one person Norman can't manipulate, and that's himself.
So then there's a lot of great Century stuff, Norman stuff. We're gonna talk a lot about that. And I said it during the review of Thunderbolts, but they were totally aping this relationship in
Yep.
that movie.
Yep.
It's
There's another Century MCU bit that I want to call out later on, but yeah.
it's completely the microwaved version in the movie, but it's coming from this place, and I love their relationship a lot. The cover of issue 5, which Tyler had up, I think it's up now. Fucking amazing. That's such a good cover of Norman
Yeah.
with a goblin mask on, just looking absolutely maniacal. So good.
Is that a Marvel Snap variant for Green Goblin? Because it should be.
Not that I know of.
Damn. Screw it up.
That's the press that press conference. That was good. And all throughout that, right? Like I like the intertwining also of PR and him having to make sure that he saves face, and he saves face not only for the team or for Hammer, but more importantly for like his new position, his title, and that having to do so leads him to like spiral out as well.
That was one of my favorite sequences in the whole book. Was the TV interview.
Mm.
I think that might be my favorite. One of my favorite issues, honestly.
Tremendous. The way the level of bullshit
Yep.
that he is spewing, like
Yeah.
you know that he believes in the mission, and you know that through the end, because at the very end, when Norman is talking to himself, he says, "What I was doing was working. It all could have worked if it wasn't for you." When he's talking to the Green Goblin, so you know he believes in the mission for real. But the amount of bullshit that he says when he literally prayed to God, that panel and that sequence of panels, just insanely brilliant work on Mike Diodado's part. It's so funny. And when you think about some of our leadership today in the real life world, I could totally see a television appearance like this playing out.
Oh,
and I couldn't believe it. Like Bendis was so on point with this.
There's that bit where it's like classic whataboutism, where the reporter's like, "Well, Norman, you have a history of mental illness and being the Green Goblin and being a bad guy." And he's like, "Well, Hawkeye does too." You know, just ignore what you just said. Let's talk about Hawkeye and how he was a villain. Oh, he was with some terrorists, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Like that is clearly what would happen in real life.
Well, it's also, perfect, a perfect comparison because they're the world's greatest heroes at the same time, and they rose up from that. Why can't he?
And that's what I liked about it, is that it's based in truth. Why is what Norman is saying wrong? It's wrong because he's a liar. It's wrong because he's actually a monster. But it's the perfect message because the message is factual. And it plays. Sorry?
I bought it. I read that. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. He's right. Why can't he be an Avenger? Wait a second.
This
Stop
explains
the
the 2025 American political climate.
Just amazing stuff. Ben, really, truly, some of the best of Bendis at Marvel is that particular. I mean, there's great stuff all throughout this, but that particular sequence, that particular issue 5, maybe my favorite issue of the whole run.
And he does that with a lot, like with a lot of characters, where the standouts in my mind are obviously the Sentry one, but the Ares one, and that's down a little bit farther down, but where he adds this complexity, and in this case, Norman's lying, but it feels like it adds a complex layer to him, that he's misunderstood, that people need to come on his side because the mission uh will ultimately succeed, and that gets you on the bus.
I mean, bringing up Ares is a good point because I think it's issue 1 where we're reintroduced to Ares and Sentry, the sole members that are staying over from the previous Avengers team. They kind of look at each other like, no, we still have to be here. It doesn't matter who's in charge. The mission is what matters. And that's Ares' whole arc throughout this. Like, there's that one bit where Nick Fury, he says, "You're back on the wrong horse here, bud." And like, it's just. Marco, did you read Siege at all? Ever?
No.
Okay, you're an Ares fan.
He was cool, dude. Him and that son.
Check out Siege.
Okay.
Yeah.
That shit was cool. I was like, okay.
Dude, that stuff between Phobos and Ares, Phobos being Ares' son, if you were reading Secret Warriors at the same time, then you were very, very much looking forward to seeing how Ares would react when he found out what Phobos was really doing, some stuff that happens later between Phobos and Ares, Phobos' ultimate destiny and stuff like that. There's so much great work in Secret Warriors, and that was something that Bendis was a part of as well with Jonathan Hickman. They were co-writing that together. So an amazing series. It's very much worth your time.
Dude, once Hellfire popped up in here, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, I forgot about him. And then Stonewall's there.
Yeah.
Manifold. That's where Manifold shows up, right? Isn't like Eden Facey the mutant portal guy? That's a Secret Warriors creation.
Huh. I guess I didn't realize he was created there, but okay,
Yeah.
Nice. Love that character too. The issues where there's the Atlantis invasion, and the Dark Avengers have got to do something about it, and so Norman wants to go and just tear shit up, and it's a great moment, and we get a few like this where Victoria Hand is kind of like, hey man, you need to stay back because you are in way over your head, and you put me in this position to tell you when you need to step back, and I'm telling you now. So he
Yeah.
resists or whatever, but then he sends the Sentry to go and handle business. And the Sentry kind of doesn't want to. He's like, wait, why would I do that? And then Norman is like, all right, look, as much as I love you, Bob, I need this done. So I'm going to talk to the other guy right now. And he talks to the Void. And that's like a heartbreaker moment where it's like, damn, this dude is willing to do anything to get what he wants, even if it means bring out the worst part of the Sentry to get this done.
Well, that wasn't the Void. The heartbreaking part of it was the fact that the word balloon didn't change. A Sentry was disappointed in that response because he responds with saying, "You said there was no Void," in the normal voice, and then he flies off. That felt to me like Norman played his hand at trying to access that and tap into it, but it ultimately failed upon Sentry.
Don't his eyes change color though?
They do.
They do, but for me it was the word balloon. Like that to me was just like, like when you get the shadow cast over your eyes because you're down now.
Like you do.
Yeah.
Right, as one does.
Imagine your eyes going black, Marco. That would scare the shit out of me.
Hey, but Sentry was used as like in almost every instance. It's like, hey, go figure that out real quick, and then if, something happens, we'll be right behind you.
An intern.
He's the only one that does anything.
Yeah.
I guess other than Bullseye at the end, but
like you're right though. Like the other Dark Avengers don't really do much throughout this whole book.
They're sitting around.
They have no real character arcs.
Yep.
Which is actually one of my issues with the run.
Yep.
This is the Sentry Norman book. Everyone else is kind of a backseat. In rereading it, that really jumped out to me. I guess Victoria Hand has an arc, at least throughout. But Bullseye has multiple points where you think it's going to play itself out. There's going to be some payoff at the end. Like there's that bit with where where Ares, kind of bitch slaps Bullseye early on. And Bull's like, all right, I'm going to get my lick back. Never does. Carla Moonstone is, sleeping around the whole Avengers tower as trying to make a play. She gets shut down
Boy,
pretty quickly
that's-
by Hand.
That's rough.
Yeah, which is like I didn't like that either because her character was much more developed in Warren Ellis's Thunderbolts run, and here she was just just using sex as a manipulation tactic, which that bugged me a bit as well. But I would say that's probably my biggest downer on this book, which that everyone else is just second, third, fourth, fifth fiddle.
I think it would have worked. The sex angle would have worked if it paid off more. Like we get rid of was it noh-varr, but the reasons there aren't really explained, and so there wasn't like machinations there, as much as it just kind of happened, and then she starts to go, and there's a moment where she looks at the camera, and it's like, oh, okay, now you're trying to get to me, which felt a little emptier than. Well, I guess that's the only other character that really tries to like quote unquote make a play.
So noh-varr leaves the team because he realizes that they're not actually heroes. He thought they were. And he's like, all right, if you guys are not really good people, then I'm getting the fuck out of here. And I always read Moonstone's angle like this is a Norman book. There's no doubt about it. And so to me, it's the Sharks circling. Norman surrounded himself with a team of people that he wanted to sort of be his Avengers, but they're not trustworthy. They're actually crazy. So in a way, they're all plotting against him or plotting to take someone down or do something that's going to disrupt all of this. And for me, it's more just tension building than anything else. It's like, which one of these scenarios is going to explode? Who's going to be the one to pull the trigger? Who's going to fuck up? Who's going to do something to get at Norman? And even though none of those particular situations don't materialize, I think you're supposed to be thinking the whole time, like, this guy has a lot of problems, even in his own camp, that he cannot solve.
I did appreciate the use of that, like more mature content. There was a lot of sexuality. There was a lot of like um anger that also came out in like some level of violence, which I feel like can get curtailed sometimes. You can kind of make it a little more PG or teen rating, but I think they did a good job, as well as the swear words. I don't mind when it's like when it actually the character count spells out the word. Like
Mm.
I appreciate that. Where like
Do you
nowadays
count the
it's just-
characters to find out the
You
word?
can. Yeah, I mean,
didn't even
you
think
don't.
about that
It's
one,
obviously
yeah.
context, but I appreciate that more than, hey, let's just put in like these 4 or 5 like random characters and try to associate it with something, because it makes me feel like I'm being treated as a um, a better reader. I'm not like, getting my hand held.
Yeah, you can interpret a 4-letter, caption over a 13-letter one that doesn't interrupt the flow of what's being said.
Yeah,
Tom King.
yeah, that was on my mind. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you about the tension part, but I think especially where it fails is it all just feels wild and random because of this group of characters. Like you've got in the background Mac Gargan barely holding on with Venom, and he's like brimming with anxiety or whatever, and at the end he gets sidelined, and I'm sure that's addressed somewhere else, but okay.
Not
Tyler's
really.
shaking his head, yeah, pretty vigorously. Like it feels like, that that tension would have been ramped up if he had to deal with that.
And it's funny because he has kind of the same arc in Thunderbolts, the Warren Ellis one. Sure, he's Venom the whole time. They're not masking him as, Black Suit
Yeah.
Spider-Man. But the whole idea is like, hey, I have this monster. How do I control this monster? This monster's going to be a monster at some point. and he does break. So he has the arc in Thunderbolts. You know, there's the power goes out in Thunderbolts Mountain, and then he goes on a spree because of that. This fizzles out. Like, none of the side characters really have arcs throughout. There could have been a Bullseye, Ares arc. There could have been more of noh-varr and Moonstone if they really wanted to, where it doesn't need to be tied to Norman and affect his arc. Like that's whole arc can still exist with Sentry and all that, but there could be C and D plots here that I don't think there really is throughout this, and I don't know if this works as a collection either, because you don't even get the main resolution by the end of this.
Yeah.
So I think that's what really bugged me about reading these 16 issues.
Well, let's talk about the Dark X-Men, Dark Avengers, Utopia crossover issues. These couple issues were actually written by Matt Fraction, and I believe the artist on these is Luke Ross.
Yep.
I was not feeling the X-Men at this time, not really at all, and so I didn't give a shit about Utopia. And I actually found these two issues to be the worst part of this reread. I mean, they're not even written by the writer we came to the table for, but also I just I don't think they work terribly well. I mean, you get to see that Norman takes a loss because Emma Frost is actually not on his team. She's you know, like a secret agent or whatever. Really still aligned with the X-Men, and Namor ditches as well. So those are really the first losses that Norman takes in the Dark Reign era. So it's good for that. But otherwise, I really did not care for these issues.
They're not even in the collection. The complete collection that was collected skips these two. You get one page that describes what happens. So even Marvel doesn't think these really fit into the Dark Avengers story.
Good.
No, good on the app.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like, especially at this point, like it feels like I don't know, not wasted space, because like you say, it feels like a hard loss that Norman has to eat. But at the same time, like, you know, we're just spending this time complaining about how, you know, there could have been more character arcs. That's, you know, 40 pages that could have been easily used for stuff like that.
And wasn't like Dark Reign X-Men or Dark X-Men was its own book. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Keep that there.
Also by Norman?
No, so the Dark X-Men were a group put together sort of by Norman in conjunction with Namor and Emma. And Emma was a sleeper, not a sleeper, but a double agent for Cyclops at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to fit these pieces together. Yeah.
I remember the fan outcry at the time was like, "Yo, this is stupid. Why the hell is Namor and Cloak and Dagger on the X-Men?" People were pissed at this. And you know what?
I mean,
they don't become X-Men ever again. Like this becomes a trivia stat when you're trying to name X-Men more than anything.
It interrupted. It just felt like it interrupted. Yeah, this was all right.
Yeah. We can totally move on from that because I really did not care for those issues. 9 is the Ares issue. It's the Ares Phobos issue, which is, you know, it's sort of a pseudo tie into Secret Warriors and makes a lot more sense within the context of that series. But reading comics in the moment of this coming out, this was necessary because you needed a way to get people to buy that book. This is the #1 selling comic. So it's the best comic for you to use to get people to buy other comics. And of course, Ares being in this one and Phobos being in that one makes it a perfect companion piece. But the other thing is that it establishes important elements about Ares that, you know, aren't terribly relevant going forward in this series, but given that he is a member of this team, I think it's good to see, like, hey, what does Ares do outside of be a Dark Avenger? He's a dad. He sucks as a dad. He doesn't know how to be a dad appropriately. And so to me, when you get to the last issue and you see how Thor deals with that whole situation, this issue, that moment doesn't work without this, I don't think.
Agreed. I do wish maybe we'd have got more Ares and Norman. You know, two shitty dads, maybe talking about being shitty dads. Because I don't even think that interaction ever happens. But I did like this issue a lot. I mean, yeah, I'm a Secret Warriors fan, so I'm also a New Warriors fan. But so that this popped me, even especially seeing like Nick Fury being Nick Fury. I was like, oh hell yeah,
Yeah.
miss that dude.
White Nick.
Yeah, well, you said it.
I'm on record. I miss White Nick Fury.
This issue, especially when he just kind of like he's like, hey, to Fury, it's like let's just talk and like what do I do? I was like, ooh, where's this coming from? Also, this is Ares. He's just out here being a dad. Fucking
In the Bronx too.
In the Bronx,
Bronx
bro?
representation in my comics.
What?
Shit.
Yo, single dad? That's crazy. And again, this was one of those issues that felt like, oh, you're treating me like a seasoned reader, like someone who can work through a this complex character, and you're dealing with a theme of just wanting to be better for something else. And so it's also disappointing when I think you called it out earlier, Sean, where it's like, hey, you know, you're on the wrong side of this. It's like, hey, man, I'm here doing my job, I'm doing what I have to do, and if that means being against my son to some degree, that is what it is. And that was again an interesting wrinkle.
And another example of like you not reading any of the stuff that's connected to it, but still getting enough out of the issue itself. Your connectivity is there if you want it, but not if you don't need it.
I felt for it. If I were reading this at the time, and I didn't know, and I knew that there was another book connecting to this, that I could see more of that, easy buy.
Well, if you can find it.
Yeah.
Well,
Secret Warriors, dude. It's good Hickman too.
That's just one of the key strengths of Marvel's strategy at the time was they knew how to mix and match these characters and books and stories to make you want to buy other things and see what else is going on. I mean, like you say, if you like that appearance from Phobos, read Secret Warriors. It's all right there. If somehow you enjoyed the X-Men's appearance in this book, you know, there's stuff to see with that.
That's what I was going to say. It's really funny that this one worked. This crossover worked. It's not labeled, but the X-Men ones didn't.
The biggest part of that to me is that it's just not even written by the same guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Matt Fraction's X-Men for me just didn't land.
I just remember way too much Mr. Sinister in that as well. Am I right in remembering that?
That's the Gillen Avengers.
Oh, I forgot
That
Gillen
comes
has a
right, or X-Men, I'm sorry. That comes right after.
Gillen has a love for Mr. Sinister.
He created that version of Sinister. Gillen did. The
zesty Sinister?
Sassy, yeah. But another critical thing happens in issue 9, which is when Lindy shoots the Sentry in the fucking face and blows his face off with noh-varr's gun.
Back to back 3 stellar issues, I thought, like in character studies as well. It was Ares, then it was Sentry, and then it was Victoria, was it? Maybe those happened in a different order, but
they did. They did happen, but in a different order.
Okay. But yeah, wild. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's fucking complicated. What does this mean? Yes, we saw her earlier, kind of like almost comatose, like just on the bed, and that felt shady, and like I'm like, oh, that's a little creepy. I don't know what's going on there, and to get to that point, something must have happened, and further intrigue.
Yeah, I forgot how little she is in this. I think she's much more involved in Avengers, if I can correct me. Like she's sleeping throughout most of this book.
But not even sleeping, which is weird.
She's just laying. She's having a rest.
So the context that's absent from here, and I'm surprised they didn't say anything about it, is that she had died. In Mighty Avengers, she dies, and she's gone, and then she comes back, and they don't explain how, And the reason why she's telling the Sentry, like, you won't let me leave, you won't let me be, is because when she was killed, he resurrects her. But she doesn't want to be alive, not with him. So that's why she's like almost comatose, because she's a prisoner in life. She's not just a prisoner in the tower, she's a prisoner in life. She wants to be out
Yeah.
of life, but he won't let her go.
Yeah, in the context of this story alone, she is a bit of a she's just there to be fridged, really. She's a bit of like I did find like at least Bullseye's doing it, who's a shitty person, so of course he's gonna do it the shitty way. But forgetting the context of what happened in the previous Avenger stuff, I think there needed to be a little bit more of her in this. In a way, I almost liked. Oh, this is gonna be a weird take as a seasoned Sentry fan. I almost liked that the movies didn't use her, or the movie at this point.
I could see that.
It's more of an internal struggle, where this is the external manifesting the internal.
I just don't think there's enough space. I don't think there's enough space, and it really changes the way you look at him when you find that the Sentry is keeping his wife hostage in life. Like, it's a very weird, creepy thing that I don't know works. Because, again, at this point, we've been living with the Sentry for years. So you already have a very positive impression of him going into this book. All this stuff we're seeing is what's supposed to turn your impression of him. If it's the first thing you see, then you know he's a maniac, and who cares? It's the turn that's interesting.
Yeah, and what works in the film is that other people have arcs around the Sentry.
Sure. Right. Yeah. The Molecule Man is next up, and he bodies the Sentry a lot of times. The Sentry is shown to be nothing compared to the Molecule Man for the first bits of this, and this is where Norman just starts to crack completely. We've already seen him like locked in the Iron Man suit room and all that stuff, but now that he's facing down the Molecule Man and all these fake well, they're real people, Enchantress and Mephisto and them, but they're not really there. Molecule Man is making them appear there. But again, Norman is a regular guy. I don't know how I would feel. Actually, I know how I would feel if I saw Mephisto in real life. I'd lose my fucking mind. And the only reason why Norman doesn't lose his mind is because he already did. But clearly, this is just too much for him.
Dude is naked the whole arc, too. That's where Deodato's shadow is really coming to play, hiding the little goblin.
The Green Goblin.
Yeah, you think he's got cornrows down there too? Sorry.
Yeah.
That was perfect. The nakedness, like he has nothing. He has no suit of armor. He doesn't have his cute little fucking goblin booties. He doesn't have the packs. He has bare ass. Right. That's it. In the face of death, the Molecule Man could erase him if he chose to.
It's Molecule Man, Mephisto, the Beyonder, I think, is there too.
The Beyonder, Enchantress, and Zarathos.
It is Zarathos. Yeah. It's like you're fucked. But somehow he still fights too. Like, that's the one thing with Norman throughout this, is that even in the odd, like the odds are stacked against him constantly. This is a human man in a world of gods. He will not give up. Doesn't work out for him most of the time.
Well, and the Molecule Man goes, "Listen, I'm not going to kill you." And Norman goes, "Okay.
Well, in that case,
you're not going to kill me? All right, then you need to do what I tell you."
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you're not going to kill me.
Hey, he keeps wheeling and dealing. That's his whole thing. Is he's just like trying to get to the next, like literally he's trying to get to the next sentence if he possibly can.
Yeah.
This is the first time, I think, where we see, maybe I'm a little bit ahead, so correct me if I'm wrong, but where we see the Void form, like not just the black eyes, but the actual a version of the body of the Void.
Not
Don't
yet.
think so.
I don't think. I think the first time we see it is after he gets shot in the face, which is after this fight.
Yeah.
You mean by Lindy?
Yeah, because he gets
shot
the demon face.
before this.
But we don't see the like what happens after that moment. We just see his body fall, and then like
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that does. Yeah. The actual
Yeah.
we see it later. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
I totally
Oh.
forgot that they explain Sentry's powers throughout this arc. Well, to an extent. Like, they solidify Sentry's power set as he has control over molecules. He's Molecule Man. Which reading that, I'm like, all right, there's the MCU Secret Wars. That explains everything.
Right.
So reading this, I was like, yeah, okay. This I'm seeing the blueprints here. I
that
like
was
that.
another. Yeah.
I like that face off. I totally forgot about this arc when I was rereading this. Because I don't think I had context for Molecule Man when I was reading this for the first time. I wasn't a Fantastic Four guy. So having then been a Fantastic Four guy after the fact, and then Secret Wars and all that, I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. I think he was just a C-list villain in my eyes when I had first read it. So having these, again, essentially gods fight while this one naked dude is trying to deal with his own mental illness at the time really just shows how, like, yes, Norman is the protagonist, or is he the protagonist of this book? I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's still a villain. He's still a bad guy. He's not compelling in the sense that, like, you want him to win. In this, he just struggles again throughout this. Victoria does more work than him in this arc.
all of it. Yeah. And I like that Norman can recognize, like, he recognizes the crazy, because that's the other advantage, is that every time he interacts with somebody, that person is also crazed. And Molecule Man has made his own all-powerful friends out of nothingness, and he's like, "Oh, you're insane. Let's chat. Let's try to figure this out." And that's where, yeah, Victoria comes in, and she has the same idea. She's like, "Hey, you know what? We can't beat you. You're right. Just same game plan." She gets into his head. "Hey, you don't have to kill us. So do this."
She was great. Victoria Hand was awesome all throughout this. The next issue after this arc is the Victoria Hand focused one, where we kind of get her backstory. And or maybe I'm misremembering, but we get her backstory, and her whole deal is like she wants to be in the mix. She believes in Norman. She does think that he's got the right idea. And maybe reading this now, it's like, well, why would she think that? But when I think the book does a decent enough job explaining why. But when you look at the history of that stuff, um, Norman or the world is screwed. The U.S. has been screwed, and it needs change. And she believes that Norman is that change.
Yeah, when you think about, like, the history of everything that's happened in since Secret Invasion, like, the Avengers have broken up, they've gotten back together, they've fought each other, and now
Cale froze.
Oh, I genuinely
we
was
find out
looking.
that
There you go. You're back.
man,
You're back.
am I back?
You're back,
Yeah.
Where did I get?
You said and then literally froze there. We thought you were just doing a classic Cale thing.
Same.
Oh, wasn't that funny? And then you find out that the Skrulls have been, in charge of everything for the whole time. So you see the one guy get to take the shot in front of absolutely everybody. Of course, everybody's going to think Norman Osborn, is the guy. So it makes absolute sense that Victoria Hand would be sort of, the general populace's stand-in.
Well,
Exactly.
it's realistic. Like, this is pre-2016. The idea that, like, the established form of how things work, the Avengers government, is not working. Let's upend it. Let's get a businessman to fix it. Huh? Sound familiar? It's almost prophetic in a way. Except Norman is only there for like 2 months canonically. But yeah, I think that's and Victoria being that stand-in for people, for the normal guy. in a way. Like there's that bit where she gives Nick Fury that letter. He doesn't even get 4 sentences in before he dismisses it. Norman is at least somebody that is going to value her opinion. And throughout it, I actually like the bits with her and Norman. I think that's the most relatable or likable Norman is, when he's like, you know what, you're right. I've had bosses that do not listen to me. I've had great bosses that do listen and take feedback. And when Norman does take that feedback, even though is he really taking the advice? Who knows? But that's a compelling dynamic that I like throughout this run.
I love Victoria Hand. I don't know where she is these days.
Dude, they don't use her. It's a bummer.
They got to bring her back.
Yeah.
They got to bring her back.
They just made a movie about her.
Well, she was actually in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show for a bit.
Oh,
Was she?
Yeah. And then I think the MCU decided that she was ready in the show, so we can't use her. But yeah, I liked her in that too.
Oh yeah, you're right. I remember
Iconic
her.
hairstyle.
Wow.
Yeah.
But then it's Siege time. We get into the Siege arc, and I got to tell you, I don't know. I'm not sure if I've ever been more excited for an individual comic book the way that I was looking forward to Dark Avengers number 13. The build up to this issue and finding out what the origin of the Sentry actually is. Is he God? Is he a god of some kind? Is he Jesus resurrect? Like, what is this? And the teases about bringing up God and bringing up all these religious references and things like that. Like, it was so open ended. Like, what could this possibly be? I didn't know. So I don't know if I've ever looked forward to an issue more than this one. And then we get the answer, which is not anything related to God or the cosmos or the universe. He's a drug addict who takes a serum that makes him the Sentry. And because he wasn't, because no one man should have all this power, he gets saddled with the void as well. And I think there's more to it than that you learn from Siege, but that's what we get here in the Dark Avengers. Did that answer work for you guys as like the real origin of the Sentry?
I thought so, and I thought it made that character feel tragic in a way where before I got brought on like a roller coaster with Sentry. First, I was a bit afraid, then I was sad for him. I pitied him, and through this, it felt like, okay, now he's troubled, but still ultimately, but there's a part of him that is crazed and therefore somehow evil. So I thought it answered the questions that I didn't necessarily know that I had, and it did make him a more tragic hero. And especially when they also said, it's like when you try to give other people the Captain America serum, it doesn't work out. It's only through you, like, because the serum and because of you, Bob. I'm like, oh shit, okay, so like that almost felt like, oh, you're just genetically disposed to predisposed to be this, and that made me feel sad for him. So I didn't know that I needed it, but as I got it, it worked well.
Yeah, I think my issue with it is it explains how he got the powers, but it doesn't really explain where the void comes from.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't explain the interesting part.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that in this that's like Norman shows that he has the Sentry serum again, right? He's got the special serum, and that's never brought up again. Is it just a bargaining chip that he has in his back pocket?
It seems like it, yeah.
But rereading this, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm missing something that's not in the collection or not in Dark Avengers. But I do love the whole flashback, and the way Deodato's art too is using the flashback. It's different. It's got a haze to it that I liked.
It's black and white.
It's black and white too.
There's
Yeah,
pencils, yeah.
It's the exact opposite. Like,
which I enjoyed. I thought Deodato's art looked really good in black and white.
Yeah, it really did.
and one thing that I guess before we get too far from Deodato, but in the previous arc with Molecule Man, he had that waxy sheen for when you were in the molecule world, I guess.
Different artist.
Oh, is that what
okay.
it was?
That's Greg
Yeah.
Horn. Yeah.
Ah,
Who
okay.
Greg
Well
Horn
played.
did. Was he doing Miss Marvel at the time, Sean?
I don't remember.
I think he was doing Miss Marvel, the Carol Danvers stuff pre Secret Invasion.
Ah, okay, okay, good catch. I did not notice that. Um, I just thought it was like another way to represent it, but that makes sense. But here, yeah, where you get that black and white otherworldly, it felt like the antithesis to superhero comics. They're meant to be shiny and bright and colorful. Okay, I meant to say shiny and bright, and I said shite.
Hey, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Speaking Cal's language, yeah.
yeah.
They're meant to be shite. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Okay. um, and you get it intercut with like the black and white, where it's just devoid of all that, and I it worked on so many levels that way. So I really appreciated that issue of just getting to explore deeper into his character, and I thought it also maybe even made like maybe I was reading too much into this one, but felt like it made allusions into like the underground comics where things are a bit more less black and white, more gray, um, but really good
Interesting.
all around.
The the Century bit where Bob, I think he fully comes to terms with the fact that he's not in control of himself and he might never be again. And he
Mhm.
tries to kill himself by going into the sun, and the void is there talking to him and telling him, like, you've tried this before, it doesn't work. What are you doing? It's a waste of time. Just accept what is. And the parallels between what he's dealing with and what Norman is dealing with are so clear and evident. Norman can't control the goblin any more than Sentry can control the void. And I know we talked about that, but um, those are some excellent pages. They're excellent pages, and I think it's here where Osborn realizes I don't even need Bob anymore. I need the void for what comes next. And he's using him like a dog off a leash. You see it in the sequence with where he threatens Doom. He threatens Doom with the void in issue 15, where he's like, you're either a part of this or you're not. And if you're not, this is what's coming for you. Um he's just using him now. Um
It,
this is also go ahead.
I was gonna say that one bit where he uses him like a dog during the Cabal scene, which I was like, oh, I forgot Taskmaster was in the Cabal at one point. And like Diodato draws great characters there. You only see Norman and the Void facing the camera, I guess, but it's body language for everyone else. Doom still the same. Lady Loki, I think she's still Lady Loki at this point. Is kind of slumped over, casual. The Hood and Taskmaster are freaked out. That's just great character work from an art perspective in a single page that really explains who everyone is without really needing to read the word balloons.
Yeah, just an awesome page. And Siege is coming out alongside these issues, so this is like a fever pitch of excitement if you're reading at the time, because you don't know what secrets are going to be revealed. You don't know what's going to happen next, and it's just so exciting. And then Bullseye kills Lindy, which we talk about and we acknowledge the fridging aspect of it. Um, I don't think there's much to Lindy as a character, so if that's going to fuel the story that Bendis was telling, I'm fine with that. Um, and it's all a lie. Iron Patriot or Norman wanted Lindy out of the way, and I think part of it was because he just doesn't need Bob anymore. And so he sends Bullseye to do the job. We've been wondering, when's Bullseye gonna do something? Who's he gonna kill? He can't kill any of the other Dark Avengers because they're not Daredevil or one of Daredevil's girlfriends. So he goes for the next best thing and kills the Sentry's girlfriend.
This is where I kind of like was like, all right, well, we're fridging someone. This comics for the time, I guess. But then like this mixed with like Moonstone, it's like, oh man, the women in this are. But then Victoria Hand's a great character.
Yeah.
So like throughout this, I kind of felt a little weird in terms of like, Bendis, who is known to write really strong female characters. Most of them just get typically comic booked in this. But then on the flip side, there is Victoria Hand, who I think is compelling, and especially where she ends up by the end of Dark Avengers.
Which as a millennial job hunter feels just wrong. I think the thing about this though is it's a bad guy boys club book. And, you know, obviously that doesn't like excuse it, but I do think
Well, heard it here first. Cale is okay with Frisian.
there are, but I mean, like, it's also like it's in like the Diodato art, right? Like, you know, the women are drawn, you know, low cut V's and low waist tops with thongs hanging up to their ears, and you know, like, I think that's, I think it's, I do kind of think it's reaching for something, but you know, I don't think it is above critique, but I don't think it's asking for it at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't read this as egregious because we know what Bendis is capable of, and we do have the Victoria Hand aspect of it all. I don't think that there's anything wrong with Moonstone's presentation because she's clearly going for something. She's not having sex with these people for the sake of it. She has a point and an agenda. And with Lindy, like, I don't know, what was the destiny of Lindy? I got a feeling it was this. Um, it just doesn't bother me. I don't know. And there are other great books being written at the exact same time, also by Bendis, where you can see the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's why it jumped out to me. It was like, oh, this didn't feel like Bendis in that sense, you know? Like, it seems like a writer that was well aware of this being a thing at the time. I mean, the Kyle Rayner thing happened in what,
90s,
yeah.
But I think what Cale is saying is the point. It's just not the book for that. It's a bad guy book.
Sure. Let
That's
them be
just
bad.
it. Yep.
I will say the art shifted for me here.
It did. I was about to call that out.
And I just looked it up. It's the same. It's Rain Barreto on colors. Like, so the creative team does not change art wise, but the art really shifts. It becomes more. Almost feels like clay. Like, this is the issue that I have with stuff like oh geez, Sean, who did Gillen's Darth Vader run on art?
Salvador LaRocca?
Yes, it feels more like LaRocca at the time, where I guess the technology is changing a bit for coloring, and it felt like a clear shift from even like 13 to 14.
Yep.
By the time we get to like the last issue, I have like one of the last pages. Oop, there's a spoiler there. I have one of the last pages here where it just feels a lot less black. Yes, the heavy blacks are there, but there's more form with the colors. There's more gradation to like the dark, like, whereas I think black would have been the color that helped build form to the things. There's more dark purples. There's more dark greens. I didn't like it.
The shading, the
Yeah.
shading of that, like that intensity. You're right. It feels like, you know, Mike Choi, did Moth's AWA a while back. Like waxy, 3D modeled almost. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the level of it. And
It felt more like the Greg Horn stuff in the previous issues.
yeah, it was a hard shift that I did not appreciate.
Neither. I don't like. I never really thought about it to the depth that you just laid out, Tyler. But I think you're totally right. And when I got to these issues here in the reread, I was like, all right, well, something changed, but I couldn't piece it together.
Well, I thought the
it was
creatives
a different
changed.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was at least a different color or a different anchor. I mean, I'm going off League of Comic Geeks here, so it's possible there's a different anchor. They don't list who the anchor is, unless Diodato. I think Diodato typically inks his own stuff, though.
I think he
If they
does,
don't
yeah.
link, if they don't, it's generally that means it's the person.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure if this was just like, oh, it's not listed on the website because the website didn't exist when this was coming out, and it's more backtracking. But yeah, it felt distinctly different, even though the creatives don't change, which threw me off.
There's art, so
The other thing I wanted to briefly mention in relationship to the Carla Sofin, Miss Marvel stuff that we were talking about, that I do think kind of colors it a little bit, is I kind of view each of these Dark Avengers as, and it's not like my view, it's kind of what the book is doing, analogous to another Avenger, right? And so Miss Marvel's counterpart is Carol Danvers, who is the exact her approach is the exact opposite of Moonstone's. Um, and Matt Gargan is like this fearful little loser, whereas Spider-Man is absolutely nothing like that. And you can kind of go down the line. Um, I don't know if Bendis did the best job he could have done in accentuating that and bringing that stuff to light. Um, Part of me wonders if he needed a little more time that he didn't get, because it's 16 issues, but it's really 14. And 14 issues is not a lot of time in comics, especially when you have to do the Siege tie-ins. The last issue doesn't even really, it's really a wrap-up of Siege, not even a wrap-up of this.
It's because I feel like the other characters are half baked. Like there's ideas brought up there with Moonstone, with Bullseye, with everyone besides Dakin. We have not mentioned Dakin at all this whole episode.
No.
But there's a whole bunch of just like it's like something was there, but it kind of just Siege happens, and then that's the end of the arc. That's the end of Norman's story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about Dakin real quick.
Can we?
I was not a fan of that character at this time, really at all. It wasn't until the list. I think his list issue, which is the Punisher the list issue, where Norman sends him after the Punisher, and they have this fucking insane fight all across New York. Punisher is blowing him up. He's shooting him with guns. He's doing this, that, and the third, and it doesn't go Punisher's way at all. That is Dakin's shining moment in this era, but unfortunately, it's outside of our purview. And it's clear that Bendis thought of Dakin as a loser because in Siege, he gets fucking roasted by Thor. Like, really, really bad. He hits him with the lightning, and Dakin is done. So to me, there's really not a lot to this guy.
He's barely using this. That's one of the I think casualties of this reading this as just Dark Avengers.
Yeah.
I think the list. Do you remember who drew that issue of the list? Was it Ramita?
I don't. Let me look it up real quick while you.
I don't remember, but I remember he. Man, that's an issue you should seek out, Marco. Dark Reign, the list, the Punisher. Did you ever read Frankencastle? It's Tony Moore and Remender. Great book. But
it was Ramita. You're right.
It was Ramita, yeah, because he draws some sliced up bits. Even Marvel's Red Band books never live up to that book because that shit was brutal.
Let me tell you, there is not an ounce of hyperbole in what Tyler is saying.
Marco's face.
Seek out this issue. I wish we had the ability to do like a much like deeper dive into this era and like really read all this shit. I wish we could talk about Siege, the list, all that is amazing.
I feel like Dark Avengers doesn't work by itself. I think Dark Reign works very well. I don't think
Dark. I mean, what do you mean by Dark Reign though?
I think encapsulating the list, encapsulating the Cabal issues. I don't know if you guys read the noh-varr annual by Bacalo.
No, not in this. No.
Which is great. And Siege. I think all of that together as like the Norman Osborn Dark Reign era works super well. But it's the downside to the interconnectivity, where it's like you're missing out on stuff, which makes it a little hard to collect.
That was Rick Remender.
Yeah.
On Frankencastle, yeah.
On the list?
Did you do the list too? That makes sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was different artists. So the idea was that Norman has this list, which Victoria mentions here, of like people he just needs off the board, and the Punisher is one of them.
Marco, you're the only one of us who's coming into this with no real other baggage or thoughts about the like what's happening around this. As 16 issues, do you think that they work without the context of the rest of Marvel because you don't even have it.
Yeah, I think it totally functions. The end is the only part that felt like out of left field. Suddenly, Norman's arrested and in jail, and I'm like, oh, I missed something.
You miss a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite a bit.
You see that Phobos bit, and you're like, what?
yeah, oh yeah, but it's funny because the book had a thing where it would like flash back into something, so I'm just like, oh, okay, maybe they'll explain it, and it's like they go back to yesterday or something, and I'm like, oh nope, farther. So outside of that, I thought it was a tight package. Like I think the focus of it was on Norman and him wrangling mostly the Sentry, him working with a hand to be able to like get the mission of trying to live up to the Avengers, and I think that was successful. So outside of that, I yeah, I think this is enjoyable and functions as a cohesive story with a few things here or there that probably I would need maybe an extra issue of reading that I think should be better collected by the Marvel app because I definitely missed out on like maybe 2 or 3 issues.
Did you have questions about that one bit where Captain America and Captain America are just spying on them?
Which
Where-
one?
There's I forget the end of one of the issues where I think it's oh wait, no, you didn't read it. It was the noh-varr annual where that shows up. Never mind.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that that's your perspective, Marco, because obviously now the only way to read this is in the aftermath, and some people won't seek out, especially today when Thunderbolts movie came out, and there might be people looking for more Sentry stories. They're going to land on this, and they may not have the ability or knowledge of the rest of Marvel. And so, to me, it's encouraging that you feel like this works independent of all of that knowledge. But what like you could read nothing else, but if you don't read Siege number 4, which is what happens between 15 and 16 of this, that is the key issue that I think you really, really need to see in order for this ending to make a lot of sense.
And Marco, that's drawn by Olivier Coipel, too.
Oh.
So as a guy that was really into the JMS Thor at the time, Siege was killer for me. Loved it.
Hot fire.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because like I would have wanted this to be collected better. Like DC does a good job of collecting all of these in order, but here on the Marvel app, it just like here's the series, go figure it out.
Yeah.
If it okay, so if it were DC, for example, and we were talking about like let's say you were reading Batman by Morrison as an example. Batman by Morrison has Final Crisis tie-in issues. Would it have included Final Crisis if it were on the DC app?
Only the relevant issues. So if there was maybe 1 or 2 issues that were relevant to that storyline, it would place it at the right position as well in that
Wow.
storyline.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what I did for what did we read last? Whatever we read last, that was a DC
JSA.
thing. JSA. I could select the issues and put it into a list, and then I shared that to the Discord because I think that's an easier way to. I can just click on that. Oh, here I organize it the way that I need to do it in order. So here I can't do that on the Marvel Unlimited app.
It's just series rather than storyline.
Right.
Yeah.
DC
Which-
Superior.
Whoa,
sorry,
hey,
sorry.
hey,
I know
wrong
it's
podcast.
Marvel.
It was a Marvel
Sorry,
show.
My
Yeah.
bad.
Come on, with this fucking guy.
Final thoughts?
Fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, especially after the Morgan Le Fay stuff, because that part didn't intrigue me until some of the consequences happened, and that happened maybe issue 4, which that's not bad. And I was thinking about whether or not I would recommend this to somebody, and I felt like because there was context missing, unless you're okay with just jumping into a series, you're not going to question, hey, why is Norman in this position? I get it. I don't need to like have the context to be able to read that, but obviously I missed a shit ton. And whatever that was is okay because Bendis did a good enough job putting down what I needed to pick up in that first issue and then running from there. And I mean, outside of the end, yeah, this felt cohesive. So I would be overall, this was a good experience. Another good experience in the world of Marvel, and this is where it's one of those things where I'm like, oh damn, okay, I see a point to go this direction, and in this direction, and in this direction at different issues because of different storylines that connect.
Follow-up question, Marco. Now that you've read Dark Avengers, you've read Alias, which was 2 book clubs ago. Do you hankering for some Bendis era Marvel content?
I'm getting it. I get it.
You
Like
getting a taste?
yeah.
I think those are
but,
two
but,
wildly separate points of his work too.
But I think him being the linchpin is the thing that is driving me. But then also like I was scrolling through, I saw there's Dark Reign, not Dark Reign. There is Dark Avengers Ares, and that's written by Gillen. I'm like, okay, you know what? That's an entry point potentially. Gillen and I don't know who this is, Garcia. So maybe not Bendis as much, but definitely different books within this time frame. Like this universe feels well built.
Yeah, for me, I think I still recommend it, but I would recommend it in the context of those other books that I mentioned. I think it works much better that way, and probably should be read that way. I don't think this works as just Dark Avengers. Strangely, the second volume of Dark Avengers that happens like 5 years later is more standalone and better. But I still recommend this. But I would just add, more of the other Dark Reign stuff and Siege for sure to this if I'm recommending it to someone. I still think it's good though.
Yeah, overall, I did have a good time revisiting this and remembering what was happening around it. I think that I would probably, I don't know that I would recommend it as much as I would probably reach for something else. Probably Warren Ellis's Thunderbolts for a similar but less uh mainline feeling. Something just slightly less connected because I do feel like the context that's needed throughout this is just like you're missing just enough that it never quite feels whole. And then the ending when you're just dropped off a cliff.
Just yeah.
Please.
It's so interesting because the guy among us who hasn't read it all, who hasn't read all the context, feels like it works, but the guys who have read it and get the context feel like it doesn't work.
You don't know what you got if you don't know it,
Yeah, I do. I do think it works, but not as well as it could.
Ignorance is bliss.
I had the time of my life rereading this. This was so much fun. It really reminds me of a different era in my life, a different era in Marvel that the Marvel side of it at least that I deeply miss and wish we could get this feeling back. Um, I would recommend this to anybody who's hankering for more like, you know, uh these guys are kind of bad, but they're going to be the Avengers today type storytelling. Sort of similar-ish to what we got in Thunderbolts, the movie. And I think you can read this without reading the other stuff, but you might end up on Wikipedia, which in 2025, I don't think is the end of the world, especially when you're talking about stuff that came out almost 20 years ago. I think that's okay. So I think the storytelling is good enough to stand the test of time. I think the art is definitely good enough to stand the test of time. And while I would definitely seek out Siege issue 4 to add as a a missing piece, one of the most fun things that I can think of for a newer reader is reading something like this and going, wait, don't know what that means. Where do I go? And taking that journey.
And in this, 2 points for that for me was the Ares and Phobos part. Where I'm like, okay, there's something deeper there. That's interesting. And then before this is like, what? How does Norman get into this position that feels that they said that it was like the perfect storm for something. So I was like, what does that mean?
Read Secret Invasion, my friend.
God damn it.
It's good stuff too. I think Secret Invasion is much more contained than this stuff too, but I recommend it.
I remember not liking Secret Invasion very much when it first came out.
Really?
My feelings on it have changed over the years. But,
Okay.
Wild. I was gripped.
Same.
Chat, we are done with our part of the presentation, but the conversation is not over because we want to hear from you. We're going to look at the chat. We're going to read your comments. We want you to send up new comments and questions now. And let's do a little bit of a talk back about this Dark Avengers book. If you have memories from this period that you want to share, things we might not have touched on, please, now's the time. And then in a few minutes, we're going to tell you the next theme for the book club. What are we going to do next month? We're going to get into that in a few minutes. If you've enjoyed this conversation, smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe if you enjoyed what we did here. We appreciate that a lot. We've been getting a lot of subscribers recently, which is great to see. So if you're newer to us, thank you for being here. We do these book clubs once a month. And the way we arrive at the actual book is through a process that involves us putting up a nomination thread all over our platforms, you guys nominating books that are based on the theme, and then we put those books in a Final Four playoff that happens on our Patreon page that any patron can involve themselves in, and so you guys control what book ultimately is chosen for the book club. We have nothing to do with it. The only thing we choose is the theme. Everything else is on you guys. So I'm very excited to see what next months will be, and we'll talk about that in a few moments.
I'll just throw Hayden's hideout. His question pretty much early on in the episode. I'm curious if the villains becoming good guys worked for Sean, since I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in previous live streams that they don't like villains becoming good in most stories.
So this isn't quite that, and I saw that discourse play out in the chat. Hayden hadn't finished reading this, so he doesn't know the full context, but this isn't quite that. And what I don't like isn't that. What I don't like is villain-centric titles where the villain is the star of the show. I generally don't like that. But my philosophy flies in the face of this book and Thunderbolts because both of those are excellent series that I deeply adore. So it's always down to the execution for me. Regardless of my preconceived notions, execution can change anything in that regard.
I think what makes this work so well is that you're under no suspicion at any point that these are good guys. Like, you as the reader know exactly who these people are, and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And that helps build the tension throughout the series too. There's no redemption for Norman Osborn, and it's never even teased in this. Maybe for the Century, but even that is lost pretty quickly. So it's more of a tension builder. Yeah, I agree. Sean, did you ever read the Osborn mini that came out after this about him in prison?
I think I didn't buy it for the exact thing I just said.
Really?
Like, I was Osborned out, and I didn't need more of him as the central character.
I recommend it. It's Kelly Sue and I always forget.
Emma Rios?
Emma Rios, yeah.
Oh.
Which then ties into the second volume of Dark Avengers, which I recommend.
Emma Rios did superhero comics?
I don't know.
One superhero comic.
Yeah.
Two
okay.
superhero comics. I think she did a Doctor Strange at some point.
She did with Mark Waid, I think.
Yeah.
To be like, excuse me?
It's good.
I bet.
We were talking about this Century power set and in relation to the origin, and Banksy Main came in with that information. He says that just read that the Void's creation has something to do with the mastermind convincing Sentry that a dark god would appear if he ever used his powers. Sentry's control over reality made his belief come true, seemingly connecting him to a cosmic parasite formed from the primordial darkness before the creation of the multiverse.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
I didn't know that.
If-
Or if I did know it, I forgot it.
You had to have known that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you would know that.
They say he said it was pretty early on.
Yeah. Which again, I
Those-
don't reread a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Hayden's Hideout. Which character had your personal favorite arc in the series?
the two characters get arcs.
Yeah, right?
This is essentially like, as much as I like Norman, this really is a culmination of this, and Siege is a culmination of the Sentry stuff that I was reading since I was reading comics. So for me, that's really where it stands. And I mean, he's kind of the second star of this book. So I think that's important. But on my reread, it's Victoria Hands' arc. You know, and then where she ends up at the end, which we didn't talk about, but, you know, Cap pretty much interrogating her, and she thinks she's going to jail. And he realizes that she's just a good soldier, for better or for worse. I forget where she goes storyline-wise after this, but I did like that arc in the reread.
Yeah. He hires her for the same reason Norman does. Wild. Absolutely wild. I think it's tough. Yeah, obviously it's between the Sentry and Norman, and I they're pretty even for me, I think. Because I love to see Norman put back in his place. But I think this era for Norman Osborn, where he got this taste of having to be professional, quote unquote, like, you know, a stand-up guy in front of people, I think it's so good because he does play it so well, but you can tell he's cracking all the time.
I would go with Sentry because that was a storyline that I had been following for many, many years at this point, and seeing the resolution of that was something that I was very, very much on the hook for. Like this, if you would have asked me in 2009 who's your favorite Marvel character, I would have told you the Sentry.
Well, since everyone picked the meaningful storyline, I'm gonna say Venom.
Moonstone. Oh,
Over time, he slowly loses his marbles.
They were lost to begin with. His arc ends with him eating an Atlantean.
They like put him off to the side because
Yeah.
he's like soft. My man gets emotion, like, and suddenly he's like, you know what? Actually, go to the bench.
That's Matt
don't think
Gargan Venom for you.
I don't think I like being Venom, actually.
Yeah. Like, all right, guy.
The best Venom part is in the, because I read the annual as well, because it's Chris Bacalo on art. Oh, so good. But at one point, the Avengers are like doing Avengers stuff, but Venom is Venom. I'm like, aren't you supposed to like pretend you're not Venom in that book? I think Bacalo just wanted to draw that tongue.
Dan Trudeau says, "Does this make the main Siege story feel more substantial? It's the only complaint I have about that story, especially as a grand conclusion to this era." You want to talk about a story not working? I do not think that Siege works by itself
Agreed.
because you absolutely have to have the context of this and really the entirety of Dark Reign, and take it a step further, even what happens before that, because it is the culmination of all of Bendis' storytelling to this point. So I think, like, it's not a fair criticism of Siege that it's not accessible because it's not trying to be, but it isn't accessible.
Yeah. Siege itself is the final act in the play of Norman Osborn. That is Dark Reign. And I think that's why I don't think this book works. Like Dark Avengers, in my opinion, doesn't work by itself either, because you're missing that final act.
Gentle Savage wants to know, hey, Comics Pals, how do you think Dark Avengers version of Bullseye holds up in comparison to other writers' iterations of Bullseye?
He kills someone's girlfriend, so that's typical.
So on par already.
Yeah,
On the mark.
on par. I think he sees a tool in this, in quite in the way that like, oh, this dude's a fucking tool, but also a tool for Norman to do his dirty work. I think my favorite iteration is the way Warren Ellis writes him in Thunderbolts. I think that's a better representation of who Bullseye is. As like, there's that one point where he kills a child with a popsicle stick. It's rad. Oh, Marco, you got to read that run. That's good stuff.
But you saying that, he says after he's asking Lindy, he's like, "You have kids?" And then when she's like, "No," he's like, "It's a shame." And then you just said that. Now I'm like, "What a piece of shit!"
Dude
Wait
is
a
a
second.
there's no redeeming
Yeah.
quality to Bullseye
No.
in any
Holy
sense.
shit!
Yeah. He's a loose cannon. But I prefer Bullseye in other things. I think Dark Reign Hawkeye was a miniseries at this time too. Which I never read, but that was a mini that's with just Bullseye. So I gotta see who wrote that.
I like this version of Bullseye because he is out of his depth. He's used to being able to actually kill whoever he wants to kill, and here he can't. Like everyone around him can kill him, and he cannot kill them. Like he threatens Ares. There's no world in which Bullseye can harm Ares. So he's impotent, but he's still got that mouth on him. And I think that's a very interesting version of the character, but not what we typically get to see. And that's why I like it. You can see Bullseye do Bullseye stuff in any comic. This is the one where he cannot do those things, and so that's interesting.
Yeah, Dark Reign Hawkeye was by Andy Diggle.
I just pulled it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Gentle Savage wants to know if we think if it would be cool to see the Sentry in a Guardians of the Galaxy story. Dude, it would be cool to see Bob Reynolds Sentry in any story at this point. He is on ice right now.
I would say so is Guardians of the Galaxy right now. So I would also like to see a Guardians of the Galaxy story. Two birds, one stone, Marvel. If you could put Sentry in it, sure. I think. I wonder if you throw Sentry in space, that's just Magus and Adam Warlock at that point.
I was about to say, yeah, he feels like so all-encompassingly power, like of power. You know, he
Yeah.
feels like the magnitude of the Phoenix. So I guess he can kind of fit there. He like starts to swing, at people his own weight class. You
Yeah,
know?
that's not fun though. The whole point is that he is a god among men, and that's what makes him. Once he starts, this is probably why Sean doesn't like Phoenix, the current run. He just doesn't feel as strong anymore, and it feels out of character. I don't know. Keep him on Earth.
With the Sentry, I just think his story's been told. Like realistically, I think his story has been told, and it's one of those situations where the character doesn't need to exist anymore. The point of him has been told, and so it's like Venom. When Venom's first few stories told the story, and they've kept him around because he's super popular, and now we get this, whatever the fuck they're doing with Venom now. Sentry reminds me a lot of that. Like they got a great 5-6 year play with him. Stories told. Everything they've done since then has been like, okay.
I still recommend Jeff Lemire's Sentry run. It's Kim Jacinto on art. Real good stuff. 2018, I think.
Kit Fitzo, would you say?
Yeah, Kit Fisto on art. Yeah, the notorious Jedi Master Kit Fisto. Part of the what is he? Part of the Catamarillions?
Yeah, is he exactly like Doomsday? Exactly like Doomsday. There is no need for every Doomsday story ever after the first one references the one cool thing he did. And it's like, yo, if that's the only thing you can hang your hat on after 30 years, maybe rethink some things.
That seems to be the consensus here too. It's like the Sentry story is done.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
I'm surprised they didn't bring him back in time for the movie. I mean, they got time. I'm sure there is a new Sentry book that comes out soon.
Shortly, yeah. But at that point, it's like it's hard to maintain a care for that if his whole thing is like, how do you redeem the addict? I guess you can make him normal, but that was the charm.
I don't think the Sentry actually works as a long-term hero. The Void balanced him out, and it was a built-in way to keep him from being like the absolute problem solver, because everything good that he did came with something bad, and his mental health was an issue. But if you take those elements out of the equation, which how long can you keep that tension up, right? He's just a god, and that kind of character doesn't really have a place in Marvel's core storytelling. He's just too powerful.
I want to re-listen to our Uncanny Avengers discussion for when Sentry comes back as one of the Horsemen of Apocalypse to see how Marco has any context for that.
I'm gonna guess no.
Whoa!
You don't remember
dude,
reading
wait.
that part?
It's such a bit part. Like
Oh, it's
I'm
just
trying-
a reasoning to bring him back.
Yeah.
It is cool that there's one bit where like I think he's fighting Wasp and his head reformed and he's just brains and nervous system at one point. Man, that art too, so good.
Izzy's Issue says, I am loving the passion you guys bring to this discussion. Every book club is enthusiastic, but this is a fantastic threshold to beat. Well, I'll speak for myself. Thank you, Izzy. I'll speak for myself. This is my era. I get up to talk about this kind of thing. I don't know if we've done precious few book clubs that I care about the book as much as I care about this one.
Have y'all done Civil War?
Yeah, we did.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
been a few years, but
It's happened.
Because
Somehow,
that's
some
the
way,
only.
Tyler, that
yeah.
wasn't even in the first 5 years that we did that. I don't think.
Well, you were
Yeah.
holding yourself because that's your jam there.
Waiting for the right moment.
Yeah.
Still haven't done Secret Invasion though, right?
no.
No.
Interesting.
Damn. Yo, make me read it. Listeners, make me read it. Let's go.
Well, it'll come up at one point.
Put me on.
Gentle Savage, what do you guys think about the new Thunderbolts run?
Right now it's
Jim's up.
It's no. Right now it's the Doom Strike stuff with Bucky.
Right.
I'm reading it and I'm really liking it.
I'm not reading it, so I can't comment. Casbot said, would Dark Avengers be exciting if it were released today? That's a really complex question to answer because of the connectedness of the story. It's not the kind of story that you could just pluck out of its time and say, like, well, how would we react to this now? But I think if you just look at the book from a quality standpoint and don't evaluate everything around it, yeah, sure. This is Bendis at the height of his powers. Mike Deodato's a god. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think there are some things that wouldn't play the same way. Like you couldn't have Morgan Le Fay calling Moonstone a whore, for example.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah, you could release this.
Do you think you could have her be as promiscuous as she is?
No, sadly.
I think
No.
they might play it better.
I think you can do it, but they need to actually give a reason to it and actually explain it outside of she's just
Yeah.
doing this for some ulterior motive that we never get.
Because that as I read more of these of the era, like the material feels more mature, and so the violence inclusive. Like I guess that's not true. We read, what is that, there was a couple issues here and there that were pretty bad about stuff, but I definitely think the contents are can be more adult.
I say a lot that I think Marvel is sanitized. And violence appears to be okay, but sexual content isn't. And I think a lot of the subject matter isn't as intense as it used to be. Um, uh, they just don't do things that are going to court controversy. And I don't even think this book was I don't remember any controversy surrounding this book for all of the things that it does that make people today go, ooh. I don't think there was anything about this that people were balking at the time.
No, this was just standard for comics at the time.
Hmm.
One thing here, David Melendez Doria says, has Sentry and Moon Knight ever interacted? That seems like an obvious angle to explore. Yes, during this run, this era, Vengeance of the Moon Knight was happening. Issue 2 is Moon Knight vs. Sentry. And it's drawn by Jerome Pena.
Wow.
Oh,
This is like before he was like a known name. So that run I don't really care much for, but it does happen if you want to check out that issue.
Kenneth Williams with the $4.99. Thanks for the super chat, Kenneth. Really appreciate it. You guys have gotten me through many work days. Keep grinding. Thank you so much, and we will keep grinding, and you keep grinding too, man. You're out there hustling. We're just talking shit about comics, you know. Common Sense wants to know, would you pals interview Sam Humphries next on his new Thunderbolts?
I believe
Yeah,
you
call
mean
him.
his new Avengers.
Right.
I'd want to talk to him about Our Love Is Real, his weird comic that got him on people's radar way back when. It was about a woman falling in love with a dog.
That's right. I bet he wants to talk about that.
Oh, I have it. I found my copy recently.
I would like to talk to Sam Humphries. Yeah, sure, why not? It'd be interesting to talk to him about having to follow Jonathan Hickman on Ultimate Avengers. That would be interesting to me, because that was an impossible task.
Honestly, and I felt like a lot of his Sam Humphries' time at Marvel was following huge runs,
100%.
which I think was unfair to his work, because I do think he had some good work. But when you pair it up, like even he was Uncanny X-Force after Remender. How do you follow that up? It's tough.
You don't.
Exactly.
You don't. You end that
Can't.
shit. Dan
Hand it
says
back.
that the themes from these stories would set the internet on fire today. Marvel play it more safe now, and fans still get angry. And you put fans in quotation marks. I completely agree. Look at the reaction to something as irrelevant as Amazing Spider-Man, Itsy Bitsy being weird with Spider-Man. Like, they're not actually even related. Like, you have to squint to figure out their relationship, and people are acting like it's fucking Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and Jeff Loeb's Ultimates. Like, get over it.
I was reading Dark Avengers, and at some points I'm like, am I the one friend that's too woke? Like, because I'm starting to think about like, oh, that's what happened these days.
It's the new people, man. That's how it is. Turbo Tortilla says, love this show,
Sounds
man.
good.
Thank y'all. Thank you. Love you too, dude. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Hope Turbo Tortilla is having a good Taco Tuesday.
Hell yeah.
I like that alliteration. All right. Let you know, before we let you go, what the next theme for the book club is. June is coming right around. And in June, what we want to do is we want to prepare you for what's happening in July, which is the release of the Fantastic Four movie. Therefore, the theme of June is the Fantastic Four. Not
Whoa.
us, the Fantastic Four, not Cale, Marco, Tyler, and Sean. I'm talking about Human Torch, The Thing, Invisible Woman, and my man, Reed Richards. We want you to nominate your favorite Fantastic Four stories. The final four, the most nominated four, will make it into the poll, and the winning book will be the subject of June's book club, which will take place on June 24th. Set your calendar to that. Is there a Fantastic Four run that you guys would love to read?
Take Min's run, come on. That's the one that jumps out to me. But my dark horse pick actually is Fractions FF instead.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's
that's good.
it's none of these members. It's not their core team. It would be horrible if we're trying to have some synergy with the movie. But that FF realm with Walred and Fraction with Scott Lang, Miss Thing. Oh, such good stuff.
I love that book, but I think his Fantastic Four is also kind of underrated.
Leonard Kirk at the time. That's the red suits, right?
No, that's Robinson.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I think it's James Robinson.
You're right.
No, he sent the family off on a road trip, and like through the whole thing there, Reed and Sue are having this massive blowout fight, and there's like a whole issue where you see it from Reed's perspective, and he's really, really trying to connect with Sue on whatever this issue is, but he just can't make it work. So he's trying to speak to her in the way that he speaks. It's so good. I would love to go way deeper than that. And there's an issue with there's an arc where I think it's Wade and Wearing Go,
Yes.
where Reed and Doom go to hell. It's great.
Where they should be,
Uh,
honestly.
Hey, and at a certain point, Jack Kirby is God. It's great stuff.
That's crazy.
Great stuff.
Which is the FF that has Spider-Man in it?
Spider-Man,
FF.
Ghost Rider, Hulk, and Wolverine.
No.
There's
no.
a lot.
Future
There's a
Foundation.
lot
Oh,
of it.
Future Foundation, FF. Okay, yeah.
Yes. That one. That years ago on a whim, I read like the first trade of, and I loved it.
It's Hickman is with all the kids and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. That was cool. That I would want to read.
I think Artie from the X-Men comics is in that run, right? Isn't he one of the Future Foundation kids?
Maybe.
I think so.
I was on Near Mint's Fantastic Four Evergreen stream last week or whenever it was, and uh, so I had to read a lot of Fantastic Four for that, and I've read some of Hickman's FF, and my goodness gracious, is that shit fire?
Yeah.
So I would love for that to win because I only read issues 1 through 6. No, I read 1 through 20 something. Um, but on that stream, I learned that Matt Fraction actually did not even want to write core Fantastic Four. That reputation has a really bad run. I joked it should be Ever Brown on that stream.
I like how that's still
Um,
catching on.
Dude, they say it all the time over there.
There we go.
You
Adding
you
to the
really
lexicon.
like created something. But I found out that Matt didn't want to do core Fantastic Four. He only wanted to do FF. And Marvel told him, look, if you want to do FF, that's cool, but we need you to do Fantastic Four. And so I think that's probably why,
Interesting.
from a quality standpoint, Future Foundation FF really stands out because that's what he actually wanted to work on.
Hot take for another book I would like to read, and I never have. Ultimate Fantastic Four. I want to read the origins of the Maker. Never read it.
Woo! Yeah. So that you probably don't want to do because
I want to read the Marvel Zombies prelude.
I did that not that long ago, and that is it's just not good, dude. It's
Yeah.
not.
Ever Brown, huh?
Yeah, it's legit bad. Like it's not just like, oh, that didn't work for me or whatever. Like it's bad. The Maker origin is kind of cool, but everything happening in that actual book is the
That's
shits.
the lone corn kernel of the shit that is. Got it.
Yeah.
I like how the marker was. Oh yeah, that didn't work for me. Like that's like the very tempered, very balanced take. It's like no, just don't read it.
I try to always make sure, like, if I can recognize the quality of something, even if it's not for me. There just wasn't a lot of quality in this. Like, it just was like, you know when you're reading something that's just not good.
Is Ultimatum better?
Yeah, yeah, probably.
Says a lot.
At least the art's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a few volumes of Ultimate Fantastic Four, and the only decent one is Greg Land art. And it's in and out. It's hit or miss big time.
I bet the Greg Land art has something to do with In and Out. It's where he was tracing it from.
Gavin with the tease. He says he spoke to Sean Gunn about Superman and learned something interesting. but
Maxwell
that's
Lord
not for the
himself?
stream.
Jeez.
You better
comics?
fill us in, Gavin.
He says he'll hit the Discord with it. So
Oh.
if you want those hot somethings from Gavin, you gotta get in the Discord.
Oh yeah. My answer would be Fantastic Four by Hickman, but honestly, what I learned through that Evergreen stream is the Fantastic Four have a lot of great comics. So I'm more interested in what you guys are going to choose. And so this is the way it works. At some point between tonight and tomorrow, depending on when the image is available, we will get you the nomination threads on YouTube, Discord, and Patreon for free. You do not have to pay us a dime to nominate a book on Patreon. You just have to subscribe for absolutely free. You don't even no money required. That's going to last only a week. So you have to make sure you get your pick in soon because we want to make sure that there's enough time to read these things. So get your nominations in. Next week, we'll let you know the final four. The week after that, we'll know what book we're going to be reading, and we will have ample time to get our reads in and prepare for the book club. That's how it goes.
I'm excited for this one. There's a lot of stuff I have not read about Fantastic Four.
Same.
And
Hell yeah.
look at this Marvel podcast doing 2 Marvel book clubs in a row. Fancy that.
Whoa.
Dude.
How'd that happen? Hey, this could have gone another way. This could have been a DC book, but not only was it not, it was another Bendis book. So we got to double dip on Bendis, which is perfect for me. I'm glad about the way things played out. But
Did Bendis ever touch Fantastic Four?
Barely.
I don't think so. Not in like a
Yeah.
official capacity.
They were on the
Yeah,
burner
yeah.
a lot
He,
of the time, I think.
I want to say he's get there in. Oh no, I'm thinking of Doctor Strange. I was thinking of the Iron Man science mustache high five thing
skills,
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next time that we will be live with you is Thursday at 6 p.m. for Pals Polls. Great books on the docket.
Yeah.
We're gonna be having a really good conversation because this week we're gonna be talking about Batman 160, Absolute Wonder Woman 8, Absolute Martian Manhunter 3, Ultimate Spider-Man 17, Giant Size X-Men number 1. If you want to hear teases about those books, go listen to Pals Previews because we run that down and we run down everything else that's coming out this week. Get you ready for tomorrow, which is New Comic Book Day on my Wednesday Warriors Rise Up. And then also on Saturday, the main show, 10:15 a.m. Eastern. Do I even need to tease what we're going to be talking about? Is anybody not clear on what the main topic is this week?
Someone do a Deadpool?
Oh,
Mark Miller.
Oh, I love how the day after we did that show, that was debunked by him.
He's goofy. But I love his work, but he is goofy. I mean, hey, whatever. We'll talk all about that on Saturday. Hope to see you guys there.